You are not a victim of chance, nor are you at the mercy of another's will. You are the operant power. What you dare to assume about yourself and your relationship becomes the truth you will one day touch with your hands. The world mirrors you faithfully, and every bond begins within your own consciousness. If you long to manifest a specific person, do not chase them outwardly, for that only confirms separation. Instead, turn inward. See them as already yours. Feel their presence beside you. Hear their voice calling your name with love. The unseen imaginal act, once accepted, sets the outer world in motion. It is not they who must change, it is your inner conviction that must shift. The key lies in the assumption of the wish fulfilled. When you close your eyes and enter the state of sleep, imagine the scene that implies your desire is realized. Perhaps it is their hand in yours, or the simple joy of being called beloved. Rest in that feeling until it feels natural, and the subconscious will take it as fact. What you impress within must express without. So I urge you, stop waiting, stop doubting, and cease asking when. Live in the end now. Walk as though your love is already complete, and the world will rearrange itself to prove you right. For imagination is God in action, and love is already yours the moment you claim it within. You are the operant power of creation, the center from which all experiences flow, whether you are aware of it or not. Life does not act upon you without your consent. Rather, it reflects back to you the assumptions you hold within, the thoughts you permit, the feelings you embrace, and the imaginal acts you sustain are not idle. They are seeds planted in the fertile ground of your subconscious. To recognize yourself as the operant power is to understand that nothing outside dictates your destiny. Every outcome begins in imagination, and what you dare to assume must ultimately appear. Relationships begin in imagination, not in the outer world, for the outer is only the shadow cast by the inner state. Before a word is spoken, before a meeting occurs, the bond is already formed in the unseen realm of consciousness. It is there, in the quiet theater of your mind, that you script the nature of the connection you desire. If you dwell in thoughts of separation, rejection, or lack, life will reflect those assumptions. But if you choose instead to imagine the warmth, the closeness, and the harmony you long for, then the world must arrange itself to mirror that inner vision. You do not need to manipulate another, nor wait for external permission, because the relationship's foundation is consciousness itself. Imagine being loved, respected, and cherished by the specific person, and let that feeling of fulfillment soak into your heart until it becomes natural. This imaginal act is the true beginning, the root from which the visible relationship grows. The outer encounter, the words exchanged, and the gestures of affection are simply the harvest of seeds planted within. When you claim inwardly what you desire in love, the outer world must yield and give expression to your assumption. Do not chase, create inwardly. For the pursuit of love in the outer world only affirms its absence within you. To chase is to declare silently that what you seek is beyond your grasp, that it belongs to another and not to you. But the truth is far deeper. All things already exist in consciousness, and the only task required of you is to align with the state of being in possession of your desire. When you chase, you strengthen the idea of separation. But when you create inwardly, you dissolve it and stand firmly in the awareness that it is already yours. Creation inwardly is not mere daydreaming. It is the deliberate, disciplined use of imagination. It is entering the secret chamber of your mind and rehearsing the scene that implies fulfillment. You feel their hand in yours. You hear their voice filled with love. You sense the security of being chosen and adored. These imaginal acts are not weak illusions. They are the true causative power of your life. What is impressed upon the subconscious with feeling and persistence cannot remain unseen, for the outer world is only the echo of your inner assumption. So withdraw from the desperate effort of chasing another's approval or attention. Instead, assume the role of the beloved within your imagination. Live as though the bond is already complete. Speak to yourself as though the love is already shared, and rest in the certainty that the unseen reality will harden into fact. To create inwardly is to move as the master of your destiny, not the beggar of circumstance. It is to choose the end boldly and dwell there until the world bends itself into agreement with your inner vision. Feel their presence as though it is already real. Let this be your first and constant act, the silent acceptance that the one you desire is already with you in the private chamber of your imagination. Do not reduce this to a mere fancy. Invest it with the weight of reality by giving it feeling. Close your eyes and let the scene arise. Small, tangible recognitions that imply togetherness, the warmth of a hand resting upon yours, the cadence of their laugh shared across a quiet room, the simple glance that speaks of belonging. Hold these intimacies as facts, not hopes. Make the scene specific and sensory. Smell the faint perfume or the rain-scented air. Hear the timbre of their voice and the particular rhythm of their speech. See the unique light that plays upon their face in that private moment. The more exact the inner picture, the less it will feel like a wish, and the more it will settle as an existing fact within your being. Rehearse this state at night as you sink towards sleep, for in that liminal place the inner impresses itself most profoundly upon the hidden self. Avoid reasoning about how or when the outer will follow. To question the manner of manifestation is to give attention to absence. Instead, keep your attention upon the felt reality, not upon the mechanics. If doubt arises, gently return to the scene and deepen the feeling. Repeat the imaginal act until it becomes the natural tide of your heart. Speak to yourself from that end state with affirmative sentences. They are mine, we are united, love surrounds us. Live from that assumption throughout the day in small acts of kindness toward yourself, in quiet confidence rather than in demand. Remember that presence is a state of consciousness more than a sequence of events. Cultivate it until it colors every moment, and watch how circumstances and men will rearrange themselves to embody what you already are within. Let this presence guide every choice and simplify every act, until the outer mirror gives back precisely the inner certainty you have chosen to hold. Assume the wish fulfilled before sleep. For in those sacred moments, when the mind drifts between wakefulness and rest, the gates of the subconscious stand wide open. What you carry into that state will be planted deep within, where it must grow and bear fruit in the outer world. Sleep is not merely a natural rest for the body. It is the workshop of creation, the place where imagination weaves reality. If you enter sleep rehearsing doubts, rehearsing fears, rehearsing loneliness, you are impressing lack upon the very soil from which your life springs. But if you dare instead to clothe yourself in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are sowing seeds of harmony, love, and fulfillment that must blossom into form. To assume the wish fulfilled is not to strain or force, but to accept inwardly as true what you long for. Imagine, as you lie upon your bed, that the desire is already accomplished. Feel the satisfaction of it, not as something distant, but as a living fact. Let the scene unfold naturally. Perhaps the soft embrace of your specific person, the sound of their laughter near you, the assurance of being chosen and cherished. Do not look at this act as a means to an end, but as the end itself. Dwell there as if you would never wish to leave. This inner act must be vivid enough to carry emotion. The subconscious does not respond to empty words, it accepts only the felt conviction. Let the thrill of being loved move through you, until it feels so natural that you can rest in it without resistance. Even if the outer world shows you the opposite, persist. Night after night, return to the same inner reality, making it more natural, more normal, until you no longer question it. The subconscious, once impressed, will bring about outer changes you could not orchestrate with all your effort. The power of this practice lies in consistency. It is not enough to do it once and then doubt the next day. The seed must be watered with faith, with persistence, with repeated assumption, until it takes root. Every night, as you approach sleep, you hold in your hands the pen that writes tomorrow's script. Choose carefully what you impress upon the subconscious. Choose love, unity, and fulfillment. Choose the end you truly desire, not the fear you dread. When you assume the wish fulfilled before sleep, you align yourself with the creative power that governs all things. You cease asking and begin claiming. You move from hope into certainty. And though you may not know the path it will take, you can rest knowing the end is already secured within you. For imagination, once accepted as reality, compels the outer world to yield in perfect obedience. Inner conviction determines outer expression. For the world you see around you is nothing more than the mirror of your innermost beliefs. Every circumstance, every encounter, every relationship is the direct reflection of the state you most consistently occupy within yourself. To imagine one thing yet feel another is to reveal why desires remain unfulfilled. The law of life is simple. You do not manifest what you merely want. You manifest what you are convinced of in the depths of your being. Conviction is the secret ingredient that transforms imagination from fleeting fancy into living fact. When you hold a conviction, it becomes natural to you, as effortless as breathing. You do not wake each day wondering if the sun will rise, for your conviction of its certainty is so absolute that the question never arises. In the same way, if you wish to manifest love, abundance, or success, you must nurture the conviction that it is already yours. Without this inner certainty, the outer world cannot respond, because it is only reflecting the state you truly occupy. Conviction is not built by force or struggle, but by repeated assumption until it feels real. To build conviction, you must first quiet the arguments of reason and appearances. The senses may insist upon lack, delay, or separation, but you are not to be governed by appearances. You are the operant power of imagination, and the unseen reality is more real than the shifting shadows of circumstance. Persist in dwelling in the end state of your desire, no matter what the outer suggests. Each time you return inwardly to the fulfilled desire, you are deepening the groove of conviction, carving it into the subconscious until it becomes the natural response of your being. Conviction is strengthened most effectively in the stillness before sleep. As you drift toward rest, imagine the scene that implies fulfillment and let it carry the weight of truth. The subconscious accepts what you feel to be real in that drowsy state, and once accepted, it sets about arranging the outer world to match. This is why Neville urged to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, for feeling is the bridge between imagination and conviction. Understand also that conviction is not about forcing yourself to believe, but about relaxing into the state until it feels ordinary. At first it may feel like pretending, but with persistence it will grow natural. The day you find yourself no longer asking, "When will it happen?" but instead moving through life with the calm assurance that it already is, you have entered true conviction. And once you stand there inwardly, the outer must echo it. Every great change begins with this inner certainty. Outer effort without inner conviction leads only to frustration, but quiet assumption with conviction bends reality itself. The law cannot fail, for it is impersonal and exact as within, so without. Let your conviction be fixed in love, in abundance, in fulfillment, and the world will mirror that back in forms and ways you could not have devised. When the inner state is secured, the outer expression is inevitable. For life can only give you the likeness of your conviction. The subconscious accepts what feels natural, for it is never persuaded by effort, argument, or mere repetition without emotion. It does not weigh logic or reason, nor does it judge whether a belief is good or bad, right or wrong. Its one criterion is naturalness. Whatever state of mind and heart you return to consistently until it feels normal, until it settles into you as though it were always true, is the state the subconscious embraces and expresses in your outer world. Life is not determined by fleeting wishes or occasional affirmations, but by the deep convictions that feel so familiar within that you no longer question them. This is why many find themselves living the same unwanted patterns over and over. Though they may consciously desire love, abundance, or freedom, their subconscious has accepted lack, rejection, or struggle as natural. When something feels natural, it does not matter whether it is pleasant or painful, it will express. If one feels unworthy of love, then even when love appears, circumstances will arise to confirm the sense of unworthiness. If one feels prosperity is foreign, then even when money comes, it slips away to match the inner sense of lack. The subconscious is faithful to the tone you carry inwardly. To change life, then, is to change what feels natural. This is the real work of manifestation. You do not fight the outer world, nor do you beg for change from others. You shift the inner sense of naturalness until the new state is accepted. At first it may feel like pretending, for you are introducing a new idea into a mind accustomed to the old. But with persistence, what once felt strange begins to feel comfortable, and soon it becomes the unquestioned atmosphere of your being. When this happens, the subconscious accepts it, and the outer world follows without resistance. The most powerful time to impress the subconscious is as you prepare for sleep. In that drowsy state, reason grows quiet and imagination reigns supreme. If you take into sleep the feeling of already being loved, already being successful, already being free, then the subconscious receives that impression as natural. Night after night, this practice reconditions your inner sense until the new state becomes the natural one. What was once a distant desire transforms into the normal tone of your life, and the subconscious, faithful servant that it is, expresses it in form. Naturalness is not about forcing belief, but about relaxing into it. A child does not strain to believe in the reality of play, it is natural to them. In the same way, when you dwell upon your wish fulfilled with ease, with enjoyment, with repetition, you gradually remove the sense of effort and replace it with the sense of being. That is when the subconscious accepts. It is never the loud declaration, but the quiet, consistent assumption that alters destiny. This principle reveals why persistence is vital. One imaginal act done once may stir hope, but unless repeated until it feels natural, the subconscious will not adopt it. Just as a path is formed by repeated steps, a new inner state becomes natural through repeated dwelling. Soon you find that the thought of lack or loneliness feels foreign, and the state of love or abundance feels normal. When this reversal occurs, manifestation is inevitable. Therefore, examine not what you say you want, but what feels natural to you. If love feels natural, it will appear. If success feels natural, it must be expressed. If freedom feels natural, nothing can bind you. The subconscious accepts only naturalness, and naturalness is created through sustained imagination, persistent feeling, and the quiet confidence that what you assume is already yours. Love is claimed within, not demanded without, for no one outside you is the source of your fulfillment. To seek it outwardly, to plead for another's attention, to beg for their affection, is to confess inwardly that you are lacking, and that the power lies in their hands. But love is not granted to you by the will of another. It springs forth from the state you occupy within yourself. When you claim love inwardly, when you dare to feel yourself already cherished, already chosen, already embraced, you call forth from the world its visible proof. The outer person is but a mirror reflecting the inner claim you have made. To demand love without is to set yourself against the law of life, for the outer can only echo what has been accepted inwardly. Demands and efforts may produce temporary responses, but they cannot endure, because the subconscious has not been impressed with the truth of being loved. Only what is claimed inwardly becomes lasting expression. If you feel yourself unwanted or neglected, no amount of pleading will change that reality until you first change the conviction within. The law is impartial and exact, as within, so without. Claiming love within does not mean forcing yourself to believe against all evidence. It means turning deliberately to imagination and planting the seeds of fulfillment there. In your inner world, you are free to script the relationship as you desire it to be. You can feel their arms around you, hear their words of affection, see the joy of being together. You may do this not once but repeatedly, until the feeling of being loved settles into you as natural. That is the moment the subconscious accepts it, and once accepted, the outer world must align, drawing circumstances, encounters, and events that mirror the inner claim. When you live from this inward claim, your attitude in the outer world changes effortlessly. You no longer approach others with desperation, for you are already full. You no longer cling or fear rejection, for you know yourself as loved. This quiet confidence, born from inner conviction, becomes magnetic. People respond to the state you embody, and opportunities for love and union arise without strain. The very one you once chased will now be drawn to you, not because you demanded it, but because you became it inwardly. Understand that love is not a prize to be won, nor a gift to be begged from another. It is your birthright, an expression of the creative power within you. To claim love is to align with what you already are in essence, whole, complete, and worthy. When you deny this and seek to demand love outwardly, you affirm separation and perpetuate longing. But when you affirm it inwardly and dwell in the state of being loved, you set the law of assumption into motion, and the mirror of life cannot help but reflect it. This is why Neville Goddard taught that imagination creates reality. If you would change your experience of love, do not attempt to manipulate the outer person. Withdraw inward and claim it in imagination. See yourself already in the joy of union. Feel the naturalness of affection, and let that be the state you carry into sleep. Each night, as you drift into rest, rehearse the end scene that implies the fulfillment of love. Perhaps it is the simple pleasure of hearing them call you beloved, or the warmth of sitting together in silence, secure in one another's presence. The subconscious will accept what you feel real in that drowsy state, and soon it will become the outer fact of your life. Claiming love within is also freedom, for it releases you from dependence on others' moods or choices. You no longer wait for someone to act in a certain way to feel complete. You have already assumed completeness, and the world reflects it faithfully. Even if appearances contradict it for a time, persist in your inner claim. Persistence transforms the strange into the natural, and once it feels natural, it must express. Therefore, the task is never to demand but to assume, never to chase but to create, never to beg but to embody. Love is yours the instant you claim it within, and no power outside can withhold it from you. The outer world is powerless to deny what the subconscious has accepted as real. To know this is to walk in quiet assurance, resting in the truth that your inner claim governs all outer expression. Love is not a future possibility, but a present reality waiting to be embraced in imagination. And the moment you do, the mirror of life will return it in kind. Walk as if the desire is already true, for the world responds not to what you long for, but to the state you embody. Desire in itself is not enough, for desire can sometimes carry the subtle admission of lack. To walk as if it were already true is to shift from yearning into being, from hoping into knowing. It is to wear the end as your present garment, to carry yourself in thought, feeling, and action as though your wish were an accomplished fact. This is the essence of living in the end, the foundation of all manifestation, for life cannot deny the conviction you embody. When you dare to walk as if it were already true, you cease asking questions of when and how, for these belong to the one who still doubts. Instead, you rest in the certainty that it is done. You carry yourself differently, you think differently, and you interpret events differently because your inner state has shifted. You no longer view circumstances as obstacles, but as movements of a larger plan that is already unfolding in your favor. This inner attitude radiates outward and reshapes the very conditions of your world. Consider how naturally you live from convictions already accepted. You do not wonder if the ground will hold you when you walk. You move freely because the conviction is unquestioned. In the same way, when you adopt the conviction of your fulfilled desire, you begin to move through life with assurance. If love is your desire, you walk as the beloved. If abundance is your desire, you walk as the prosperous. If health is your desire, you walk as the whole. The outer reflection must eventually conform to the inner identity you assume. This principle reveals why imagination and feeling are so vital. You cannot simply declare words of desire while inwardly living in contradiction. To walk as if it were true, you must first see it in imagination and feel it in the heart until it begins to feel natural. This inner rehearsal, done repeatedly, reconditions the subconscious. Once the subconscious accepts it, the state becomes natural, and walking in it is effortless. You no longer pretend, you simply are. Walking in the end is not about outwardly forcing action to prove something to the world. It is about inward alignment. Outward actions that spring from inner conviction flow with ease and bring results, while outward actions without inner conviction lead only to frustration. You cannot trick the law of assumption. It faithfully mirrors what you truly feel to be real. Therefore, the task is always inner, to embody the fulfilled state so completely that it shapes your every perception. One of the most powerful ways to enter this state is through the practice before sleep. As you drift into drowsiness, imagine a simple scene that implies your wish fulfilled. Feel it so vividly that it becomes your last impression before rest. In this quiet surrender, the subconscious accepts the state as fact, and you will naturally rise in the morning inclined to walk as though it were already true. Repeated night after night, this practice shifts your inner center of gravity until the wish fulfilled becomes the natural atmosphere of your being. When you walk in this way, you discover that the world rearranges itself to reflect your state. People respond differently, opportunities arise, and circumstances align in ways you could not have planned. This is not coincidence but law. The unseen state you carry determines the visible experience you meet. If you persist in the assumption of fulfillment, no delay can prevent its manifestation, for persistence turns the strange into the familiar and the familiar into fact. At first, walking in the end may feel like play acting, especially if outer evidence seems to contradict it. But persistence is the secret. Just as new shoes at first feel unfamiliar, but soon mold to your feet, so the state of your desire fulfilled becomes natural with repeated dwelling. And once it feels natural, it must express outwardly, for the subconscious only produces what has been accepted as normal. This path also frees you from desperation. When you live in the end, you no longer chase, beg, or struggle, for you are already in possession of what you sought. You approach life with calmness, gratitude, and quiet confidence. Others sense this state, and the world responds to it. You become magnetic, not because you demand, but because you have already claimed within. Walking as if the desire is already true is the greatest act of faith, for it is faith in action. It is not waiting passively, but living actively in the unseen reality. It is to believe so fully that you embody the result before it appears. This is the way of creation, the law that governs all things. What you are within, you must meet without. Therefore, if you would see your dream alive in the outer world, begin now to live from it inwardly. Carry yourself as the one who already has it. Think from the place of its fulfillment, and let every step be the stride of one whose desire is complete. In doing this, you align yourself with the truth that imagination is the only reality and assumption is the bridge to expression. Walk now as though it were already done, and the mirror of life will confirm your conviction in perfect and inevitable ways. Imagination in action guarantees manifestation. For imagination is not a faint play of mind, but the creative power itself, the very force by which all things are called into being. Everything visible began first as an invisible conception, an image held within consciousness and allowed to take root. The clothes you wear, the building you inhabit, the relationship you enjoy, all were once unseen thoughts clothed in feeling, until they hardened into the facts you now encounter. When imagination is left idle, it produces nothing of significance, but when imagination is put deliberately into action, sustained with feeling and persistence, it becomes the unfailing cause of expression. To understand imagination in action, you must see it not as daydreaming, but as deliberate assumption. You choose a scene that implies your desire is already fulfilled, and you enter it inwardly until it feels real. The more vividly you dwell in that inner act, the more natural it becomes to you, and once it feels natural, the subconscious accepts it. From that moment, the unseen forces of life begin to arrange themselves to match the conviction you have assumed. This is why Neville Goddard said that imagination, clothed with feeling, becomes fact, for the law of life does not fail. Imagination in action is the opposite of waiting. It is not sitting idly and hoping that circumstances will change, nor is it begging another to give you what you desire. It is the conscious use of the one true, creative faculty you possess. By inwardly living in the end, you are already moving into possession of what you long for. To imagine being loved is to begin to be loved. To imagine being successful is to begin to be successful. To imagine being free is to begin to be free. Life has no choice but to mirror back to you what you have already assumed to be true. Consider the way conviction shapes experience. If you imagine yourself rejected and persist in that imagination, the world will surely provide circumstances, words, and events that echo rejection. Yet if you imagine yourself chosen, adored, and secure, and you persist until that inner state becomes natural, then the world must mirror that back to you in forms and events that confirm it. Imagination is not a weak escape from reality. It is the power that determines reality. What you dare to assume inwardly will one day become the fact you cannot deny outwardly. Imagination in action requires persistence, for a single imaginal act, though powerful, is often not enough to overturn years of contrary belief. You must return again and again to the inner scene, not with strain, but with quiet faith, until the new state becomes familiar. Each time you repeat the act, you are deepening the impression upon the subconscious. Eventually, the new state feels more natural than the old, and at that point, the subconscious has accepted it. Once accepted, expression is inevitable. The outer world cannot resist the command of inner conviction. The time before sleep is the golden doorway to impress imagination upon the subconscious. In that drowsy state, when reason grows quiet and the senses recede, imagination becomes most potent. If you carry into sleep the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the subconscious will take it as fact. Night after night, if you enter that state and rest in it, you are planting seeds in the most fertile soil of creation. Soon, without effort, circumstances will conspire to bring about the outer fulfillment of what you imagined inwardly. Imagination in action also transforms your daily living. When you begin to identify with your fulfilled desire, your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors naturally align with that state. You interpret events differently, you carry yourself differently, and you expect differently. This subtle shift is powerful, for life responds to the state you occupy, not the words you speak. Others feel your inner conviction, and they respond in harmony with it. Opportunities arise, people appear, and paths open, not by accident, but because imagination has already prepared the way. Doubt and fear lose their grip when imagination is truly in action, for you no longer measure reality by appearances. You know that appearances are only the shadows of yesterday's beliefs, and you trust that the inner assumption is creating tomorrow's fact. This trust frees you from desperation. You no longer chase after results or strain to make them happen. You simply persist in imagination, knowing that what you see inwardly must one day take shape outwardly. This is the secret of faith. Faith is nothing more than imagination in action, sustained until it feels real. When you pray believing you have already received, you are engaging imagination in its creative mode. You are not asking, you are claiming. You are not hoping, you are assuming. And by doing so, you set in motion the law that guarantees manifestation. Faith is not blind, it is deliberate imagination clothed in certainty. To live this truth, you must shift from being a passive dreamer to an active creator. Do not merely think about your desire, think from it. Do not merely wish for love, live from the state of being loved. Do not merely long for abundance, walk in the assurance of abundance. Do not merely ask for freedom, embody freedom within. This shift is imagination in action, and it is the secret key that unlocks manifestation. Even when the outer world contradicts your inner vision, persist. The contradiction is only the echo of the old state, and it will fade as the new state takes root. Do not be discouraged by appearances. They are powerless against sustained imagination. If you will hold fast inwardly to the end you desire, life will inevitably adjust to reflect it. The law of assumption never fails, for imagination in action guarantees manifestation. Therefore, begin this very moment to live in imagination as though your desire were already true. Carry that scene into sleep, repeat it with feeling, and let it grow natural within you. Refuse to measure by appearances, and persist until the new state feels like home. For what you dare to assume in imagination, sustained with conviction, must one day crystallize into fact. The outer world has no choice but to obey the inner vision. For imagination in action is God's creative power working through you, and it guarantees manifestation in ways beyond your present understanding.